Now call this meeting to order.
In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act and JSA 1046 et sec, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by advertising in the Star Ledger, El Nuevo Coquí, Haiti Progress, and Luz Americana newspapers, and by distribution to the administrative offices of the Newark Public Schools. A copy of the meeting notice was also forwarded to City Hall for posting. This is an advisory board business meeting for Tuesday night, October 21, 2014.
Please rise for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call the board members.
Mr. Hassan.
Present.
Mr. Jackson.
Present.
Mr. Lewis.
Present.
Ms. Matthias. Dr. McCreary. Ms. Perello. Mr. Rashidi.
Here.
Mr. Sellinger.
Present.
Ms. Baskel-Richardson.
Present.
Quorum is present.
We'll now have our committee chairperson's report. If we could please start with our committee report coming from our Program and Instruction Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bear with me, please. Well,
Just to come back to you, Mr. Jackson.
Yes, please.
Could we go to personnel?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The Personnel Policy Committee met on October 14th at 5:30. And in this meeting, we were given a staffing update primarily. The update we received was that there were, in the EWPS pool, 187 educators that have been identified as being an EWPS, and that they've all been assigned to a school per the principal's discretion. All have been placed as additional support across all schools. And we were told that the staffing team is currently conducting a roster audit, which will conclude at the end of the week to ensure that each role of the EWPS educator is serving in schools, and that is documented, and that those educators who are serving as lead teachers, where there's a vacancy, will be hired into those available roles. We were given an update on the community engagement specialist. Approximately 50 people have been hired as community engagement specialists. And we were told that the principal selects these individuals. Many of the folks that were hired have been in the district for a while. We were given a per diem paraprofessional update. Approximately 1,000 paraprofessionals working in classrooms exist right now. And that the Office of Special Education has identified the need for approximately 960 paraprofessionals based on the need documented in the student IEPs. Currently, approximately 850 of those 1,000 who are working are per diem paraprofessionals. We were given 2 principal updates. Currently at George Washington Carver Bruce Street and Girls Academy, those positions are being filled in the interim capacity. Carver is being led by its current vice principal, and the girls are being led by former SATQ, which is Special Assistant of Teacher Quality. And the vacancies, we were given the report of the vacancies across the districts. Belmont Runyon, 0 vacancies. These are for the regional schools. Belmont Runyon, 0 vacancies. Speedway, 0 vacancies. Hawkins, 1 vacancy. Flag, 3 vacancies. Lewis Marine, 3 vacancies. Horton, 4 vacancies, and Hernandez, 4 vacancies. And then for the non-renewed schools, we were given an update that across all other schools, there are approximately 100 teacher vacancies, and that the staffing team is in process of reconciling the data with the schools to ensure accuracy of vacancy fills with the EWPS and new hires. We're supposed to be receiving that information this week. That's the conclusion of the audit. And we're supposed to be also be getting, supposedly also getting a completed roster with the most refreshed data. So we're expecting that. Hopefully that's ready in our packet on Friday. So ends my report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Board members, you heard the report coming from our chair of our Personnel Committee. Are there any questions, discussion regarding the report that was presented? Ms. Baskerville-Richardson?
Thank you. I have a question, Mr. Rashid. For clarity, you said 100 paras. I'm sorry, 1,000 paras, and then you said the special ed needs 960. So I wasn't clear if they need an additional 960 or if that 960 is included in that number of 1,000 that you gave.
From what we understand, that 960 is included in that number.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the chair of our Personnel Committee? Mr. Rashidi, did your committee have any recommendations to accompany with the report you provided?
Well, like I said, we are expecting the true numbers this week. Hopefully it will be in our packet this Friday, so at that point we can review it and then we can ask any questions after we review it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the report coming from our personnel committee?
Motion.
Second by Mr. Lewis. This is a motion to accept the report of the Personnel Committee moved by Mr. Jackson, second by Mr. Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? That motion carries. Report accepted.
Now we can circle back to our Program and Instruction Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening again. Program and instruction, our meeting was on October 15th, 2014. Present was myself, Donald Jackson, Dr. Rashid McCreary, Ms. Antoinette Baskerville-Richardson, Ms. Shueya Hamilton, Ms. Gia Worley, and Ms. Maritza Castillo. First, we discussed field trips. The report for the field trips was not ready to be presented and voted on. One of the issues that we're facing is that the new system in which field trips are submitted, they are submitted electronically now. The district, however, does have a backup plan in place, which is to convert to the old system, so that way no students miss out on field trips. Dr. McCreary asked about any professional development or tutorials with using the software. Ms. Castillo also stated that there are online tutorials with the software on how to use the software, and that there have been training on how to use the new software. The issue is not that the schools might not know how to use it, but they're submitting the field trips report in late.
Any attendance data for the group of students who showed no growth from the summer enrichment programs?
Mr. Chair, we did discuss that, and it actually brought up another point in the meeting. Ms. Worley reported that out of 4,000 students that attended the program, there were 1,000 no-shows. And we were tasked with also trying to figure out ways and some solutions to try to keep parents to stay with the program. We then got to a number where the number was on a not a sharp decline, but a small decline after the 1,000 stopped going. Families would drop off. So that was one of the things with the data. And just to also mention that last year in 2013, only ELA was offered with the enrichment program. So it was really hard to compare math scores this year to last year because math wasn't offered.
I would like to just request through your committee that we get the attendance rate for those groups of students that you specifically mentioned that didn't show any growth. What was the average attendance amongst those groups of students during the summer enrichment program? You also mentioned there was some dialogue regarding some of the some of the purchase items. Did your committee have any sense of unreadiness regarding those items? Or are you okay with moving forward and bringing those to the full board for a vote?
The only item that we would be hesitant on was, again, the autism software. Other than that resolution, everything else seemed okay.
So in the package we received this week, there was some additional information. I believe this is the actual service agreement with Rethink, which was attached to the finance items for this week. And it shows that this service is going to be provided for as an early childhood program, and this is for the licensing. The cost of it is $90,000, and this will be provided in 5 buildings, early childhood buildings, and then 1 K-8 building. And this is a 12-month subscription. And Ms. Hamilton, do you still have the description that you provided in our finance committee meeting last night regarding the services provided by Rethink?
Mr. Chair, I also will offer that Dr. Katzman provided some additional information that we'll include in the packets on Friday, which is that this is primarily for our pre-K classrooms serving students with disabilities as well as classes in McKinley. And it's, I understand that a fuller description would be helpful for the board. It's mainly to help track progress in those particular classrooms, and we'll have a fuller description soon.
That's actually the summary that I read in the finance.
Yes, understanding that we also, the committee, myself, we wanted to get a little bit more information about Rethink New York, if possible.
What specific? Do we have specific questions that we want to ask? I would just ask that we be specific in what we request, because you're saying we want more information.
What was discussed in the committee meeting was we can have background information, basically based out of how would it work on our end. We can have a technician and someone trained to use the software, things like that.
Dr. Perkins, could this be handled by way of a conference call with Dr. Katzman, perhaps?
Definitely. It could also be handled with additional materials, either way.
All right. Do we have any further questions for Mr. Jackson?
Yes, we noted the feedback items from the P&I committee. We have a specific list from summer school. We made a decision that we wanted to go back to the committee in particular as it relates to those questions. So we held the presentation for today so that we can go do that deeper dive in committee. And as for the Bolden Center, the presentation that we offered, I think answered some questions, but for the next meeting, we'll have the staff people representative for the center present at the P&I committee.
Thank you. I wasn't asking for the answers today. I was just noting for the record that those questions have been answered.
If there are no further questions, is there a motion to accept this report?
Lewis? Motion to accept the Program and Instruction Committee report moved by Mr. Lewis, second by Mr. Rashidi. All in favor? Any opposed or abstain? That motion carries. Report accepted.
Thank you. We'll now have our report from our Operations Committee.
Mr. Chair, Operations Committee was scheduled to meet on October 16th, 6 p.m. to Cedar Street. President was Phil Sellinger, Donald Jackson, myself, Valerie Wilson. I forgot the gentleman's name. Also was there, but Travis Reed. Mr. Barton did not show up. Did not reach out to me to cancel meeting, or did not reach out to me to arrange an agenda for this meeting. So we adjourned the meeting at 6:30. But however, I want to put on the record there was some items that I had questions about that I wanted to follow up on. Was West Side High School roof, 13th Avenue bid bug allegations, Maple Avenue Annex bid bug bugs allegations, uh, Harriet Tubman paint job, and also the radiator repairs, the entrance of Weequay High School for students, Weequay student floor plans for all consolidated schools, and also a board operations policy. Building operations policy, I'm sorry.
Mr. Lewis, good evening, Board Chair, board members, members of the community. Mr. Lewis, did you supply that request to Mr. Barton?
I reached out to Mr. Barton on several occasions. He have not returned my phone calls, nor have he returned my texts.
All right, can I ask that you supply that request to me in writing, and I will facilitate it getting to Mr. Barton?
Yes, ma'am.
Might I also ask for some clarity when you ask for board operations policy?
Building operation policy.
I need some clarity on that in terms of exactly what you mean.
Only reason that was going to be brought up at the meeting was because we had questions around, how people are allowed to operate our buildings, far as having armed guards in certain buildings of ours that's being leased to charter schools. So that's the only reason why I brought that up.
And
As a discussion in our committee meeting through the chair, we talked about it, and he told me to bring it up in our committee meeting.
okay, that's a broad one. So we will, the more specificity you provide me, listing some of the things that you've listed tonight, will allow us to do that. Because when you say to me, building operations policy, I would have interpreted it as, how do we operate our buildings? Do we ensure that boilers are on in the morning? Do we ensure that these things are happening? So with the specificity, I can then make sure that we hone in, and I will ensure that those questions are answered, hopefully before your next committee meeting, or if not, will be discussed in detail at your next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update, Mr. Lewis. We'll receive that as information. And for the record, just stating to the district, from our perspective as board members, it is completely unacceptable for a staff member to not show up for a committee meeting, especially if that person serves as the lead of a particular committee. By not having a district lead serving on our committee, it actually impedes our ability to do the work that we're put forth to do as board members, and it prevents us from being able to come back and communicate with our constituents regarding the specific issues that they've asked us to address on their behalf. We work very hard to make sure we can do that work in a committee, in a proper committee structure. So I would ask that if, through you, Ms. Hamilton, if we could have a confirmed schedule by the end of the week. We already do have a proposed schedule that's out. If we could, just for the sake of this particular committee,
Yes.
by the end of the week, just make sure that all of the dates for going forward for this year are confirmed, and there are things that work for the committee members in addition to Mr. Barton and whatever other district representatives will be attending going forward.
Yes, Mr. Hassan, and also if I could offer to the board, and I spoke to Mr. Lewis on Saturday, as we are adding new committees to our structure, we had some miscommunication about the time and date for that meeting. And so it was by no means the intention of Mr. Barton to not attend the meeting. There was just a misunderstanding about when the meeting was supposed to take place. But I understand your perspective, Mr. Hassan, and we will ensure that that gets finalized by the end of the week.
Thank you. Just to backtrack for a minute, board members, Mrs. Matias, she did inform us that she would be attending a little later this evening. However, included in our packets is a draft resolution supporting Bill A940, which was authored by Assemblyman Troy Singleton. And this resolution is in support of an Inspiration School Grant Pilot Program. I've also sent this out in email to board members to read over. Ms. Matias is introducing this on behalf of the Program and Instruction Committee. And in essence, the bill actually calls for 6 annual grants not to exceed $150,000 to be awarded through the New Jersey Department of Education to school districts who have STEM initiatives, and this will be to help school districts supplement whatever funding they have already in place for their STEM initiatives. The bill calls for the New Jersey Department of Education to award 6 of these grants annually, 2 for Southern New Jersey, 2 for Central New Jersey, and 2 for North, Central, and South New Jersey. So, board members, please take the next few days to review this resolution, offer any feedback to the rest of the board so that the proper amendments can be made and brought forth at our next board meeting. We will now have our report from our Finance Committee. Date and time of Finance Committee meeting was Monday, October 20th, 2014. Meeting was called to order at 6:23 p.m. Board members in attendance: Ms. Antoinette Baskerville-Richardson, Chair Rashawn Hassan, District Administrators attending, School Business Administrator Valerie Wilson, Shoaib Hamilton, Stacy Robinson, and Satish Desai. Topics of discussion: finance reporting. Those items included our board secretary and treasurer's report from July and August of 2014. Also, our transfers and modifications report from July and August 2014. Payroll summary reports dated for September 5th and 19th. Authorization for operating checks for the month of September. Authorization for district travel. A resolution allowing NPS to acquire and finance equipment by means of a lease agreement in the amount of $5.25 million. And this is for the lease and purchase of hardware for one-to-one devices for our students to take the park assessment. We were also provided with our NJ-CUSAC district improvement plans, which we'll have further discussion about this evening, and corrective action plans also for Mount Carmel Guild and Brighter Towers, which are some service providers here in the district. We also presented with 10 purchasing items. 2 of those items, item P6, number 8360, is a rejection of solicitation for window shades, and item P8, number 8208R, is for termination of contract for our elevator maintenance. We also presented with 3 resolutions for facility and construction. 2 of those resolutions, numbered 8353 and 8378R1, are the authorized construction contracts for projects at Arts High, one being for exterior masonry repairs and the other for the remodeling of the auditorium. The 3rd resolution, solicitation number 8316, is a contract amendment allowing contingency funds to be used for project completion, and this is also for Arts High School. Lastly, for facility and construction, NPS currently has approval for 16 emergent projects within our school district, and those total 16 projects are at an estimated cost of $36.78 million. Again, they have been approved by the New Jersey School Development Authority, who will provide a 13A grant to the school district to reimburse us for the costs and expenses associated with these projects. Open items. Our committee discussed the transition of the Newark Board of Education to an e-governance platform. All board members have received cost comparisons for the vendors, also highlights of the features offered by these vendors. Board members will be invited to attend web sessions for each potential vendor over the next 2 weeks. And we look to bring this item to a final vote and secure a vendor during the month of November. Conclusions from this meeting. It was mentioned earlier in the report that a resolution is presented to the board to acquire and finance equipment by means of a lease agreement for a park assessment. During the discussions, board members questioned the need for this. Were informed that the budget line item for park was reduced from the original line item of $5 million to $2.5 million during the adjustment of the budget. We're also informed that the district is now looking to enter into a lease to purchase agreement to fund this initiative, which is an unfunded mandate by the state of New Jersey. Further discussions must occur regarding the possible funding sources for this initiative. We look to get an additional report from the district as we move forward. New Jersey CUSAC district improvement plans for the latest interim review, which was conducted during the same time as near the same time as our full review from April 2014, will be presented this evening. So as a result of the interim review, our board adopted an updated curriculum, which is now aligned to the Common Core standards. This was done in November of 2013. And this was one of the major areas of concern during our CUSAC assessment. We believe that by moving forward in that direction, that we will see improved results in the area of governance and also in the area of program and instruction once the final results come in to the district. And lastly, our committee requested that all resolutions for SDA emergent projects include verbiage indicating that the board is approving the acceptance of the SDA 13A grant, and that it should also list the timeline for the reimbursement to the district. As these grants come in from the School Development Authority as reimbursements to the district, we also want to make sure that we're in compliance and we have a resolution approving our acceptance of those grants moving forward. There was no sense of unreadiness from our committee, and our committee recommends that all items be presented to the full board for consideration and vote. So ends the report coming from our finance committee. Are there any questions from board members? There being none, is there a motion to accept this report?
Motion.
Lewis.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackson. Motion to, motion to accept the Finance Committee report moved by Mr. Lewis, second by Mr. Jackson. All in favor? Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries. Committee report approved.
Thank you. All right. We're now moving on to item 5, which is the review of the agenda for the October 27th, 2014 advisory board meeting. I will state for the record for community members that are here, as a part of our board development plan, our board will be attending the annual New Jersey School Boards Association workshop, which will be held in Atlantic City from October 28th through October 30th. This is an opportunity for board members to, for us collectively to expand our knowledge base, attend trainings that are offered through the New Jersey School Boards Association. Some of the trainings are optional, and some of those trainings initiatives are mandatory for us to remain in compliance with statutory requirements here in the state of New Jersey. Because a majority of our board will be attending that conference, we've moved the board meeting up one day to be held on Monday, October 27th. Meeting will start at 6 p.m. It will still be at the same location, which is also noted on the district website. And that's Louis Munoz Marin. This notification is also going out to the respective papers that we publish our communications in, and the request has been made by our board to the district to ensure that this information is also highlighted on channel 77 and channel 78.
Board Chair, it's also posted on the district's website.
Thank you. Board members, are there any questions regarding the agenda for the board meeting for next week?
Mr. Chair, is Ms. Mathias's proposed resolution on there?
No, it is not. We need to add that proposed resolution coming from our our program and instruction committee. Are there any other errors or omissions, additions, deletions?
Just a quick question. As I discussed in the program instruction report about the field trips, I just want to know, would that list be ready by next week?
Yes, it will be. I think I saw it in our packet last evening. But yes, we will be ready. I'm sorry. I think I have it here. I'll look.
There are no further questions. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda pending the addition of the proposed resolution coming from our Program and Instruction Committee?
Second.
That's Mr. Sellinger, second by Mr. Jackson. Motion to vote on the, to fix the agenda with those amendments for October 27, 2014. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries. Agenda approved.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 6, North Public Schools District Report.
Good evening, Board Chair, Board members, community, assorted staff. This evening, we will be presenting the superintendent's report along with a team of colleagues who will take individual pieces. Our update this evening will focus on the collection of data associated with student performance. So I will turn you to the whiteboard in the back, or the smart board, excuse me, which actually talks, this first slide talks about our success framework. And what that feeds or drives is everything we do at the school level in terms of driving student success. So if you take our system, the first S in success this evening stands for system-wide accountability. And that means that we want to have standard approaches to tracking students, schools, and system success and progress across all schools. So we want to be sure that we know what the data is, we know who the data applies to, we see what the differences in that data are, and what we are going to do. We also are very familiar with universal enrollment, which is actually the straightforward, user-friendly, and it empowers our students and families to choose the school experience that best suits them. We experienced that over the summer this year, and children are registered in schools which parents have selected. We also have a citywide facilities and technology plan that we want to be bold, inspirational. We want to make it a participatory plan to operationalize our 21st century schools, and that the learning environment for all of our students will be a part of or a component of the One Newark vision and plan. We also want to ensure Common Core mastery and park readiness. This evening you will hear about park readiness and what we're doing towards that, and you will hear somewhat about Common Core mastery. We want to lead the nation in the number of students who are living below the poverty level, but making progress towards Common Core mastery and park readiness. And they are especially children who are too often left behind. Our equity and access for all students. We want to increase the number of high-quality seats for all students, particularly those who are left behind. We want to have a shared vision for excellent schools, and we want to embed that demand for 100 excellent schools and the groundswell of support for change that we need to get there. We want it embedded in our community. We want to ensure that it is what everybody is focused on. And last, we want to have systemic conditions for success. We want to radically transform NPS and ensure that it is a high-performing organization for years to come. We're going to talk this evening about system-wide accountability, the first component of our success model. And to provide us with the assessment data available, we're going to have Dr. Caleb Perkins do this part of the presentation. Dr. Perkins?
Yes, if we can move to the slide 4. So it's important when we look at the test data that we have available, to understand the context, because it's very hard to interpret some of this data without understanding deeply some of the changes and the things that are going on with the state test and how that relates to what's going on in the trends across the state. So I just wanted to highlight a couple things this slide does. One is it talks about the changes to the NJASC, which makes it difficult to compare results from year to year, but it's important still to think about this. One is that the expectations generally have been raised, as we're all expecting the Common Core to be a higher expectation than the current New Jersey core curriculum content standards. And that is evidenced by the fact that the math items in particular had content from what was previously in higher grades moved down to lower grades in some cases, and that in ELA there were also some shifts, particularly the use of different kinds of texts and questions. These questions were field tested last year and they were actually implemented this year, and again the anticipation is that the test overall was harder, although it's difficult without some additional data, which I'll speak to in a moment. The good news is that there is some information coming out soon that you'll see on the bottom chart that will help us put in context this data. So those folks who are looking for more information in terms of how well we did and what's going on with NJASC and HESPA, in this case, it's good to know that the state will be releasing NJASC trends in comparative districts as of in a month. And that will be very critical to understanding trends both within districts and across the state. And then the student growth percentile, which basically translates into how did each student do compared to similar students across the state. That is also coming out soon in December, and that will also give us an important set of context for the data that we're going to share. One other thing to note is that we take a special care to make sure the methodology that we use to present information gives the clearest, fairest picture of how schools are doing in terms of this achievement data. So you'll note that related to student assignment on schools, there's some important differences between what the state does and what the district does. The state looks at test scores, and anybody who's in that building on that day of the test day is counted in those results. We take it a step further in order to really understand what's going on in that particular school, and we look deeply at the results of those students who are at that school starting on October 15th all the way through the test administration. So we really want to get a sense of the effect of that school and that school's experience with that student. And secondly, as I think this board has heard a number of times, we look carefully at demographics and the different kinds of need levels of particular schools. So while the state does the general breakdown of general education, special education, limited English proficient, and so forth, we go one step further to try to show how there are differences between low need schools, medium need, and high need in Newark, and how to look at that more deeply in terms of schools understanding how they're doing related to schools that are similar to them. So I just wanted to share those two contextual pieces before we get to the actual data. Am I turning it over to?
Yeah, you were turning it over to Brad.
Okay. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brad Haggerty.
Okay, what you can see before you now are two pieces of information relating to high school data, and specifically just when particular data will be available. You can look at the first row there. HESPA data, as it states, is currently available, which allows us to see pass rates, proficiency levels in both the math and LAL exams taken last school year, last March. The row below has graduation rates, specifically are not currently available, but will be available, as you can see, in December of 2014. And the idea there is there are a number of different sort of graduation rate data points available. The HESPA graduation rate allows us to look at students not only who met the graduation criteria, and as you know, there are many pathways to graduation, but who at the same time also passed both of the required state examinations, the HESPA in LAL and in math. So that gives you an idea of what's available now, what will be available in the coming months. Next slide. In terms of providing the parallel to what Dr. Perkins just described for K-8s in the world of NJASC, this slide captures differences between the state's methodology and NPS methodology around two specific things. Number one, the HESPA data, and number two, the ACT data. So the first, when we look at sort of assignment of students to schools, the key piece of information there are the state, as you can tell, basically attributes students to schools if they sat for the test that day it was administered, in this case last March. NPS, we do that a little bit differently. We attribute scores to schools if the student was enrolled at the school on October 15th, was there for the duration of the school year, and then took that test in March, right? So we're looking at students who were there on that sort of that snapshot date where we look at who's in attendance and sat for that test later on that school year. And that's how students are matched to particular schools. You'll also see in the third bullet point there under the HESPA NPS methodology that we report all students enrolled in the school, not just those who took the test, which basically means any student who is of the age when he or she should be taking that test is included in that denominator, rather than a smaller number of just those students who someone deems eligible to take the test. What this does is this gives us a much more realistic understanding of, given the fact that HESPA happens during typically your third year of high school, your junior year, right? If you are on track, you should be taking that your third year of high school. It is often deceiving to lower that denominator by saying only a certain number of students are eligible, meaning they've passed certain English or math classes, and therefore we're gonna lessen that denominator. We include everyone in that denominator if they're enrolled in the school and are of that length of time in high school. Moving to the ACT, it's just again a sort of a small difference between what the state actually doesn't report anything on ACT. That's a specific college readiness indicator that NPS has adopted. So the state does no reporting around ACT just because it's not required across the state anywhere. Our process is basically very similar to the HESPA, where we only include the scores of students who were in that NPS school on October 15th. And that is the moment at which students are matched to the particular school where their schools are reported. So again, very similar to what was stated for HESPA above. And I believe with that, if you look, now we got some results. If you look sort of at the next slide, you can sort of see two pieces of information that compares 2 academic years ago to last year in terms of overall HESPA pass rates. So you can see in the language arts literacy subject test, 2 years ago, the passing percentage was 58%. Last year, it increased to 66%. In mathematics, 2 years ago, the passing rate was 46%, and last year, the pass rate was 44%. I can add to that in terms of, it doesn't show it on this slide, but there was an increase in the number of students, quote unquote, in that denominator, sort of eligible to take that test from 2012-13 to 2013-14. There's an increase of about 200 additional students. So where we both went up, we also went up considering more students as part of that testing population. Next slide gives us information on ACT performance. As all are aware by now, this was our third year of administering the ACT in NPS high schools. But what it shows is it shows the comparison specifically from 2 years ago to last year. And it shows it across all 4 of the tested subjects within the ACT. You can see from each, there are anywhere from modest to relatively significant gains in each of the 4 subject areas. And particularly, we always pay particular attention to reading, as that is the closest comparison to what we've previously had in HESPA and what we'll have in future PARC assessments, and we also look very closely at mathematics, again, that being a critical subject area. So those are our, again, results from last year's ACT for subjects.
Yes, as it relates to system-wide accountability, there is an enrollment data process that the district is going to undergo. About 2 years ago, if you go to the next slide, the superintendent asked me to spearhead the whole what we call the class size audit, where we did a count in every single one of the schools, in every single classroom, in every single school throughout the entire district. Part of the process obviously begins in September, where the first 10 days of school are critical towards determining what students are actually enrolled in the school and which ones are dropped from the record. Past those first 10 days of school and going to what is called the October 15th count, every single teacher is obviously responsible for accounting for all of the students that have been assigned to their respective school in what we would call the significant period or a homeroom period, where actual attendance of every student is recorded. The importance of the first 10 days of school and that October 15th time period is that there is a process that should be defined in every single school where students who are not in school, have not reported to school, are actually found because as of the 11th day of school, all of the students who have not reported to school actually do get deactivated from the roll. In the process of doing this seat count in each of the respective classrooms in every single school, the design that was created 2 years ago was that a team of Newark Public Schools staff members, so these are not people at any of the schools, would actually go to each school and actually do a head count of all of the students. In this process, what we're able to do is account for not only the actual number of students, we look at what are the class size regulations to see if in fact schools are in keeping with those items, as well as making sure that all of the teachers are utilizing the district's outline procedures as it relates to the recording of attendance. One of the interesting things during the course of this year, if you look at item number 3, where the internal data review process that the district will be undergoing is the confirmation of all classroom teachers to make sure that their electronic gradebook is actually set up. The electronic gradebook is the official recording of all of the records of all of the students in the school as it relates to attendance, as it relates to how they are doing academically. The gradebook records all of the information on a daily basis from every single one of the students. So the team that will go and do this audit will actually look to see to make sure that each respective teacher is utilizing the electronic gradebook for the recording of attendance purposes. That takes us to what is the October 15th count. The state provides each district with a window. There are a number of reports that each of the schools are required to submit to the district, and then the district submits it to the state. This is what is called an actual state validation process, and during this time period, it's actually about finished now, where the district would, in getting all of these reports from the school, actually submit them to the state. The process that I'm talking about, where a team will actually get into every classroom in every school during a designated time period, that process 2 years ago to do the entire district took us about 5 days total. So I figure with the analysis and whatnot, between a week to 2 weeks should be enough time to complete this work. Gabrielle Wyatt, who is the Executive Director of Strategy and Innovation, it'll be her team that will actually be leading this work. And the anticipated goal is to have a presentation before this board in December of the district's findings.
Thank you, Mr. Leon. We'll move on to the next systemic condition for success area, which will be the district improvement plan. The New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum is a process by which school districts are monitored in the state of New Jersey with regards to their effectiveness and efficiency. When this act first came out, it was applied to what was formerly known as Abbott districts, now known as SDA districts. It then sort of morphed into a process for all school districts in the state. The cycle is basically a 3-year cycle where a district goes through a complete assessment of 5 very specific areas. They are personnel, instruction and program, finance, operations, and governance. Those 5 areas require a score of 80 or more, which determines that a district is high performing in those areas as a criteria for passing your CUSAC review. In terms of Newark, in 2011, actually in May of 2011, we underwent a full assessment of our areas, and those scores were not actually released. They were initially released in July of 2011. Once you get your scores, wherever you are low performing or not considered high performing, you haven't met that 80% bar, you're required to do a district improvement plan in those areas to indicate on the district performance review where you missed points. So you have to provide a district improvement plan, and that has to be reviewed again by the state 6 months after. In our case, we got a 6-month interim review, and then we got another interim review. And finally, we got our scores from that interim review almost 2 years later. In the middle of it, we had another full assessment because 3 years had passed. So the scores we are talking about this afternoon will be scores that were as a result of an assessment that was done actually in June, I think, of 2012. Now, hopefully I haven't confused everybody. I've tried to make it as simple and as clear as possible for everybody. So we've done our district improvement plan based on scores we received in 2014 that apply to an assessment that occurred in 2012. In between 2012 and 2014, we have had another full assessment of the district this April and are awaiting those scores. So when those scores come out, we will see the true vision. But at the point in 2012 where we had our assessment, at that point in the area of program and instruction, we did not earn points on 7 of our indicators because the district's world language curriculum was in draft form. We did not earn points on student achievement indicators for literacy and math. And we did not earn points on the graduation rate indicator. These were the 3 areas in program and instruction which caused us to score a low of 33 points out of a potential 100, right? So we had significant work to do in that area. We also lost points in governance, but the points in governance on 2 indicators where we lost points were associated with our not having an adopted curriculum. So they in fact defaulted to instruction and program. Our score on governance at that point in time was 76%. So to make our district improvement plan, what we did was to develop our curriculum in the area of instruction and program. So we finalized our world languages curriculum, which has been approved by this board as of November 13th and was submitted during our April 2014 CUSAC review. We also made a plan to increase student achievement through an improved implementation of rigorous Common Core aligned curricular resources, and through the development of year-long instructional plans for all teachers in the areas of literacy and math. We enhanced our professional development offerings for teachers and administrators focused on helping teacher teams improve their planning. And we have a plan to increase graduation rates through high school curricular resources, adoptions in math and literacy, which have occurred. We created an Acceleration Academy that is complete, correct? And we have new online course offerings for our students. So with this district improvement plan, since we had an assessment in April, our curriculum at that point was assessed. And I don't have the scores today, but I do have an email from the state indicating that in all 9 areas of our curriculum, we are considered to be in good standing, meaning that we are compliant with the requirements of having an adopted Common Core curriculum. So we anticipate that when we receive our April scores in curriculum, we will have made significant progress in the area of program instruction. There will still be some work to be done in terms of student achievement And what my colleagues have shared this evening and the data to come will begin to show us the results of having some of that curriculum in place for almost 2 years. In the other 3 areas of NJ-CUSAC, which were the area of operations, we have been under local control for operations since 2007. In the area of finance, we recently received word and notification at the beginning of this school year that we now have local operation and control of finance. Both of those areas have been consistently high performing since the implementation of CUSAC. And in our personnel area, we have had significant and continuous high performing standards. So we've done 100% in our 2011 assessment, and I think we've done 100% in this upcoming assessment, yet to be notified. So those 3 areas are solidly considered high performing at this time. Personnel will probably be the next area that is considered by the state if we consistently continue to be high performing there for local control. And we expect to see significant improvement in our curriculum area, which then brings along with it the area of governance. So our plan is to maintain this high quality and standard in order to meet all indicators on CUSAC and to be high performing in all 5 of our areas. The last piece of our presentation this evening is another piece of systemic conditions for success, which is talking about electronic board materials. And I want to remind the community that this particular presentation will be on the district's website as of tomorrow. As is our practice now. So we want to talk about electronic board materials, and I will ask Shueya.
I mean to interrupt you. It's not tomorrow. It'll be Friday.
It's Martha's fault. She told me the wrong day because I tried to confirm with her. It's okay. I wasn't sure. Thank you for the correction, Mr. Hassan. I will now ask Ms. Hamilton to present on electronic board materials and the solutions we're looking at. Ms. Hamilton.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Good evening. I believe that Mr. Hassan covered the content of the presentation I was going to make this evening in his report from the Finance Committee, but I would like to hit on a couple of components for those public participants so you have a better understanding of some of the motivations and also some specifics as to the products or vendors we're considering working with. So the district plans, this is actually a partnership between the superintendent's office and the school advisory board to transition the way we conduct business with the board from a paper process to a complete electronic process. That would mean on the district side, our kind of the process we take to get resolutions signed, the way we present agendas and additional items will be all electronic. And then the way board members will receive information from now on will also be electronic. So you'll no longer get the Friday packets. However, the materials and information will be available electronically to individuals, actually in a quicker turnaround time frame. The purpose for this is to reduce costs, actually also reduce our carbon footprint. And then we'll also be reducing the amount of time that staff spends on preparing for the board meetings, particularly photocopying and courier costs. The other piece that I do want to emphasize is that this will increase the turnaround time for the availability of information and the extent or the depth of the information available to the public on our website. There will be a public portal where we will consolidate. We currently have the videos and the presentations available online, but it will consolidate all of that information into one portal so it's more easily accessible. We will potentially also have the ability to archive all previous years of minutes so that we'll have a longer history of information available online that'll be searchable available according to kind of keyword or search and find. So that's the process that we're undertaking. And for the board members, you have a more detailed summary in your packet. You also have an analysis of features for the 3 vendors that we're considering. And as you'll see in the notes, and you'll receive an email shortly, we'd like to schedule webinars for you to take a review of each of the products to the extent you'd like to. We also have our staff going through that process as well. We will be compiling all of that feedback and information over the next several weeks and making our recommendation from the staff perspective at the Finance Committee in November, with a plan to implement the change management process over December and January, and hoping that we'll have full launch or full kickoff in February and March.
Chair Hassan, that concludes the district's report.
Thank you very much. Board members, the floor is now open for discussion regarding the items that we just received reports on from the district.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Jackson.
Also, as stated in our program and instruction committee, and it was briefly touched in the report, being that it's after October 15th, again, I myself, along with a few other board members, if not the entire board, would like the actual attendance numbers throughout the entire district by school since the beginning of the school year. I know we've talked about one report of nearly 90% attendance for the first 2 days of school. If we can have that data shown to us, it'll most definitely and most graciously be appreciated.
Ms. Wilson.
In terms of enrollment data, and I'm not speaking to attendance, I realize you said attendance, someone else will answer on attendance. In terms of enrollment data, while we take a snapshot on October 15th, there is a period of time actually through November 30th, where that data is worked upon their districts whose may have students of ours that we need to release, who may have students who have come to us that they need to release. So we need to work that data in terms of enrollment. In attendance, does someone have an answer? Or otherwise I'll get one.
No, just to offer, to build on Ms. Wilson's response, on slide 11, the one piece that I just want to clarify is that the attendance numbers will be provided after we've had the final enrollment data process done or the audit complete. And so the purpose of this slide on slide 11 was to show that we'd intend to give that full report and assessment in December.
So my comment to that is, one, there was an expectation that was set when the request was originally made by board members. At no point in time were board members ever advised that it would take until December. We were all given the impression that this information would have been provided to us at this meeting or probably the one prior to this. And, you know, this is one of the problems that we have. If we request information and there's obviously some information that the district knows on the back end that they're still working through the audit process, then that expectation has to be set so that board members don't continuously ask for information over and over again and then come to meetings and not have it. You know, it's just disappointing when you come in here and you see this information here when this could have been stated to us 2 months ago when we originally made the request for the data. Ms. Baskerville?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hassan. So my position is that the answer that you've just given is not an acceptable answer because I know when I made the request, I was very clear that there was not a desire to wait, that there is a desire for the raw data. And I just hope that as a board member that my request can be honored, that the request of all of the board members can be honored, because as a board member, I should not have to Oprah information. But if that is what I have to do, then that is what I will have to do, because the original request that was made still stands, and the date of October 15th was given to us, and that's a date that should be honored, and there's no need to wait. We want the raw numbers. Thank you.
We understand your request, Ms. Baskerville, and Chair Hassan, we've heard what you've said. We will take it back and discuss it with our enrollment unit and try to get that information for you.
But could I just also add that as it relates to October 15th, that's the actual count day. So to the extent somebody communicated that they could provide the information by the 15th, I think there was a misunderstanding on their part in terms of what you were asking for. The data isn't actually into the state system until the 15th. So I apologize for that misunderstanding or miscommunication on our part. What we're attempting to do with this deck is to provide clarity on when exactly we'll be able to give those detailed, data-driven presentations.
Okay, so again, I am requesting simply the numbers. I'm sure that the data-driven presentation will also, of course, have added value, but my request specifically is simply for the attendance numbers for each school from the beginning of school and on.
We will try to secure that information
Thank
for
you.
you.
I apologize. Can I have a follow-up question to this conversation?
Sure.
So,
Mr. Follow
Dr.
question?
McCreary?
yes, sir. I understand what committee member Baskerville Richardson is asking for. So I'm going to be, I guess, or try to be a little clearer for what I'm asking for. So at some point, you will provide us with attendance and enrollment numbers for this school year. Yes?
Yes.
For the past year, I have asked for the data from 2012 to 2013 and 2013 to 2014 to compare what our enrollment and attendance numbers were from prior to the initiative, Attend Today, Achieve Tomorrow, what they were last year. Now, I understand the difficulty in getting the data from September to now, but it's now been an entire year, and we've seen no data for 2 years on the same issue. And we've had a major initiative around it, so when can I ask we could expect that data?
Your question is understood, Dr. McCrary, and we will investigate as to the delay surrounding your receiving that data.
Can I ask another question, not related to attendance, but from the deck? Yes. My next question concerns, I apologize here. If we can start with slide number 4, please. And I just want to spend a moment on this so that I understand. So on slide 4, and I believe it was Dr. Perkins or Mr. Leone that presented on this, so I apologize if I'm a little off.
Is this the right slide?
Page 4.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I see it now.
Okay, so where it indicates in the last category, student growth percentile, and it says that the data were presented on or about December of this year.
Correct.
Now that's the data that is being presented to the board. Will schools and school principals have this data before December, or are we all receiving it at the same time? It is just more informative question.
Sure. It's my understanding that this is available from the state for everybody in December. So it'll both be available for schools as well as it'll be available for the board.
So before December, then, I'm to understand that no school will have had NJS data K through 8 until December of.
So
I'm just trying to understand.
the specific thing that's available in December is SGP, a particular calculation where.
Okay.
But the schools, to be clear, have had NJS data for quite a while at this point, I think.
Got it. And so this is a student growth data. Now, is that just for comparing how many years of growth here?
It's from last year to this year, and I will try to just explain it simply. It's sort of all students who score at a similar level, let's say a 178. last year, how do they compare to each other across the state? All those same kids across the state, whether it be Newark or Trenton or wherever. That's a particular calculation that the state has found helpful in determining growth.
Okay. So then, in terms of growth, and I know we value it tremendously, is there a way that the board can have data for schools and the students in their building and how they moved or didn't move from 1 year or at least 2 years, right? So if I'm a fifth grader and I've been in X school for 1 or 2 years, how am I doing individually and also as a school to see how healthy schools are? When or at what point will that data become available?
So it's a commitment that we've made in previous years in terms of the classifications you remember from the on the move and high growth, high performance. We've tried to show those two axes. So the challenge that you're highlighting is that specific piece of information is what we need to wait on for December 2014.
Okay.
Once we have that SGP data, which isn't available anywhere in any district, including ours, and won't be until December, that's when we'll be able to make that analysis that you're asking in terms of what was the growth at a particular school or across the district.
Okay, and for what we're speaking of here, is there a way that the historical analysis can be more than 1 year, but the 2 years that we have, so that we can see trends? Because I mean, it's difficult to see a trend just from 1 year to another if we have data that encompasses a longer time period. Is that possible?
I believe it's possible. That I think the specific question that I just want to make sure we answer first, and I'd look to my colleagues if they want to chat, is that the top section of this slide speaks to the fact that sometimes the state tests change, and so to make a comparison sometimes is something we have to do cautious. Student growth percentile is meant to check for that.
Yes, sir.
And I think your request is at least obviously very worthwhile in pursuing. So.
Okay. So then.
But yes, I should just confirm with the data team on whether that's an appropriate growth measure from multiple years when the state tests change.
Very clear. So then, since technically we're talking about apples to oranges and things aren't 100% unison, and it won't be again for this year because we're introducing the park test as opposed to what we had in the past, right? So now let me ask this question here. If we look at slide 8, and slide 8 has the HESPA pass rate comparison from 2012 to 2013. And I see growth, or at least, I mean, nothing dramatically dramatically falling off from language arts to math, right? But then I look at the next slide, slide 9, and I look at ACT data. Now, I'm no specialist here, so I asked just to get a bearing here. What is a appropriate college readiness score for the ACT?
So there are two different ways to approach that question.
Okay.
Number one is there is a benchmark score.
Yes.
In each of those 4 subject areas, and then there is what's called a composite score, which is basically a combination or aggregation of an individual student's 4 scores that it's almost like an average, if you will.
Absolutely.
And you can use either one of those. There's a benchmark, a national benchmark figure that you can compare those to.
Okay.
So, and just to sort of give a little bit of background on what that benchmark figure represents, and one of the reasons why we selected the ACT, and that is that national benchmark figure, that particular score, and it varies by subject, so it's not the same across
100%.
each subject. But what that score is used for is historically, and the ACT has been given, as you know, for decades.
Right.
Is what the ACT does is it follows students after they've taken the test. How do they do in college? And basically what a benchmark score indicates on the ACT, I'll use reading as an example, is that if you hit the benchmark score, your chances of getting a C or better on your freshman year composition course, if
Right.
you will, are 75% or greater,
Understood.
75%.
Understood.
And your score of getting a B or better are 50%. So
Got it.
that's sort of where the benchmark numbers come from,
Right.
right? To be able to give you an idea where that is.
Okay.
what are the
so-
benchmarks?
right. So let me take a step back here now, right?
Yep.
Let's just now look at reading since you stopped there, okay? What is the national benchmark number for reading? If our guys are scoring between 15.3 and 16 over the course of these 2 years, what is the benchmark number for student success of a C or better?
Yep. So let me read them each off to you. And that would be I think that would be a helpful piece to add to this as a future graphic,
I
right?
would say so.
So in English language arts,
For
the
reading is-
benchmark score for the ACT, I'm going to read them right off here for you, is
Reading's
English
22.
ACT benchmark.
Reading's a 22.
There we go. All right, so reading. Got it. Is a score of 22.
Okay, reading is 22. How about English?
English is an 18,
English is an 18. How about math?
is a 22,
It's a 22. And how about science?
23.
It's a 23. Now, just follow me here, and I apologize if I'm a little off. This coming school year, will students take the ACT and the Park, or will there be a choice?
So all 9th, 10th, and 11th graders will take both the Park examinations
Yep.
as well as the component of the ACT. It has different names at different grades, right? The Explorer grade 9, Plan grade 10, ACT grade 11.
Okay. Now here's my last question, I believe. Is there a way that we can kind of peer inside and looking at the HESPA scores, looking at 2 years of ACT scores to kind of predict, right? Because that's what we do with numbers, what our Park numbers will look like. Because according to all the national benchmarks that we have or that you've just listed, our students are still far behind, and we've been in this program for more than 2 years now. So I'm a little concerned about what that reality is come April, May, and June.
Sorry. So quite honestly, given the fact that it's the first year of Park administration, it's going to be honestly difficult to use any predictive value of past HESPA and past ACT to determine what performance on Park will look like. What we have done is we have begun to look at, now that we have 3 years of ACT data, we were able to start to look at the predictive value of advanced proficiency on HESPA and proficiency or hitting the benchmark score on ACT. So if you, for example, if you score advanced proficient on HESPA, what are your chances, or how likely are you to get hit the benchmark in the ACT? Right. It's certainly not 1-to-1, but it's obviously more correlative.
Yep.
We can't make those same connections at all yet with Park, just simply because it's the first time of the test administration.
Okay. Last question, I promise. This is my last one. If you look at slide number, just want to find it here. Look at slide number 13. So, similar to Mr. Jackson, I'm on the Program and Instruction Committee, and we had a conversation last week after some information was presented about some of the successes that we had during summer school. And there were some very, very good successes, particularly when you talk about the middle school, right, 3rd and 4th grade till about 8th grade. But the numbers were still a little shocking to me when we talked about summer school and high school, right? And I'm going to try to wrap it up here with this one here. So it says that we didn't earn points for our graduation. Thank you. Graduation. Don't know how I can say it. The graduation rate indicator. My question is, for students that didn't graduate, NPS, however, they were eligible for summer school, take
take your pick, and or a junior coming into their senior year, knowing that they were off track, right? The numbers for students that were eligible and the ones that either attended and thus passed were extremely low. What are we doing to either A, attract those students either after they've graduated and saying, listen, this is a program you still need, this is beneficial, and or sophomores and juniors, particularly juniors, before you become a senior, saying that this is worthwhile. And then I believe, and Mr. Leone or Dr. Perkins, please clarify if I'm wrong, the seniors that were in that boat, only about a third of them passed our summer school, right? Now, again, I could be off on the number, but how is that possible? Why is that possible in terms of the percentage graduating or completing summer school, and also the numbers that are actually attending? Forget about not showing up after they're there, not attending at all, and what we can do in this regard.
I mean, I think there's a number of things that we've discussed actually in the program instruction committee, even over the past year, in terms of how to improve summer school. And I just want to highlight that we have taken to heart and taken in substance those specific suggestions on how to improve summer school generally. I just want to, in terms of the Enhanced Summer Project Plus program that we did this year was in part coming out of that, the input that we received from the Program Instruction Committee. We know that we have more work to do and that there is this golden opportunity in the summer. What we have to couple it with is to make sure that we're not compromising the rigor of the courses, and those rigor of those courses in the summer has led some of those students who have struggled previously to also struggle during the summer, and therefore we're not satisfied with those passing rates as well and want to do more. And I know that a number of the ideas that came out of Wednesday's conversation were helpful in thinking about how we could do more. So I agree with you that we should do more, because it is an opportunity to help kids catch up. I don't know if our other ASIPs would like to chime in.
Fair enough. And if I can just clarify one point here, I would say that the successes that we've seen, and we've been working together for more than 2 years now, has pretty much concentrated in the lower grades, right? However, again, I don't know if there is a program or an initiative, because when you're talking about X number of students, whatever the number is, who are eligible for summer school, and then only a quarter of them show up, especially when they are in high school, when this is so meaningful and so valuable, I wonder what else we need to do as a district in terms of reaching out to schools, students, and parents to help increase not necessarily the passing percentage for summer school. Obviously, I understand rigor and what a standard is, but if we're only reaching 25%, well, we're already at a loss. We already know what our graduation rate is going to be. I don't know if that was a question or a statement.
I agree there's work to be done.
Agreed.
That's what I have. Just clarifications.
I would also agree that we have focused on K-8 in our conversations, and I think it's helpful to perhaps shift more of our attention to the high school work.
Yeah, and to be fair, I would say that we've seen some pretty significant gains from K to 8. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Then any other questions from board members? There being none, we're now going to our public participation. What? That was the last thing.
Okay, all right. I just got a bit confused. I'm thinking finance items. I'm thinking finance items. That's okay. Go ahead, Mr. Hassan.
First speaker for this, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the guidelines for the advisory board meeting public participation section. As a reminder, time limits for all speakers will be enforced. There is no sharing or granting of speaking time to others. Speakers must be present when their name is called. All speakers are required to give their names and addresses. The public participation portion of the meeting at business meetings is limited to 10 speakers. Examples of unacceptable behavior that are not permitted include but are not limited to naming district employees and engaging in personal attacks, slurs, excessive loudness, calling out, yelling, generally disruptive behavior, attempting to disrupt the meeting, or inciting others to do so. Public participation at these meetings is intended to allow individual members of the public the opportunity to address the board and the administration on issues of public concern, not as a forum for two-way dialogue with the board members or district officials. The superintendent's designee or the board chair may respond to questions either at the end of the session or responses may be provided at a later time. The superintendent's designee or chair may interrupt any speaker or terminate any individual's speaking privilege if the speaker's comments are disruptive or obscene. An individual may be cautioned that a personally directed statement may be slanderous or defaming, and that the individual may be liable for his or her statements. Attempts to hijack or filibuster the proceedings, repeated interrupting or badgering the board members or district officials, repetitive truculent speech, or disregard of rules of decorum are not tolerated and may subject the individual group to removal from the meeting. If necessary, the meeting also may be adjourned.
Thank you. First speaker for this evening, Portia Lowry. Was that correct?
Yes. So I have to state my name and my address.
Please.
Portia Lowry, 90 Tiffany Boulevard, Newark, New Jersey, 07104. When I come to these meetings, I hear little about or no information about our special needs community. I have 3 boys, 2 of which are autistic. Isaiah is 5 years old, Tyler is 7 years old. But you don't have any information for that, for the special needs community. Isaiah is currently at First Avenue School. He is not receiving any OT to date. Newark Therapy Services, I guess, lost their contract with Newark, but there's nobody filling in to provide services for my son. So he's not getting his 2 services a week for OT. Isaiah also is supposed to have 3 sessions of speech therapy individually. The school cannot accommodate that, so they're giving him 2 sessions of individual speech and 1 group. And I guess they said that they gave him his individual aid, because he's a runner. But I'm not sure if he has his own personal aid, because those were the same people that was in his classroom starting in September. So I'm having a lot of problems with Isaiah and his services. Plus, I have no idea when his records will move from McKinley to First Avenue School. I spoke to his nurse the other day. She said she doesn't have any records for Isaiah. Tyler is at Camden Street School. This year, he will take the Parks assessment. However, I am encouraging, he's opting out, and I'm encouraging other special needs parents to also opt out of this assessment. I'm just speaking, I don't know the timeline, I apologize, but the Park assessment is a computer-based assessment. The alternative test is dynamic learning mapping test. How would our special needs community get adapted to this assessment? How would the accommodations and modifications be provided for the Parks assessment? So we have that issue. Tyler is also supposed to leave. His placement says 8:20 to 2:45. He leaves to go to a autism program after school. But he's at Camden Street. Camden Street is a renewed school which has extended school day. So he's missing out on math some days, science some days, social studies other days. He's not getting the full program nor the academic component of a full day class, a full day program. So we have that issue. Assistive technology. Again, my son, he's nonverbal. He has his device. But Adam is the only one in this district that actually does the assessment. We need more people to assist with actually doing the assistive technology evaluations and helping out with the kids that are nonverbal. Gifted and talented. Avenue is the only school that has gifted and talented. And only 50 minutes a week. We need more gifted and talented programs for somebody like my son Tyler, who's gifted. He was in pre-K3 autistic, preschool disabled. He was word calling, which is Slosum, at a 3.9 at 4 years old. He had a DR level of a 20. He moved from pre-K3, and they skipped him to autistic kindergarten, From kindergarten to autistic, they moved him to kindergarten, mainstreamed, with in-class support, with a personal aid. But half of the day, he was moving to first grade for language arts and math. Then he goes back to kindergarten, so you skipped him from kindergarten to second grade. Now he's in the third grade, and you're telling me he's on a DRA level of a 14. How is that possible if his SOSM is a 7.9? I filed complaints with the state, with the county. Evaluators came out. The district said they do not want to have mediation. So what? So the state has to do their investigation. But now I'm waiting. My kids are not getting the services that they're supposed to have because the district wants to wait. Okay? So now I have to file due process, file a federal complaint, because there's one child that is getting OT at McKinley, the same kid that was in that street jumping down at First Ave. So that child is getting it. So, but what about our other kids that needs the services? And if McKinley has an alarm on their school, what about the other schools that house special needs kids? Kids that are runners like my son who's at First Ave, where all those schools have the doors with the alarms.
Okay.
Thank we have one of us.
Ms. Lowry.
Yes.
No,
Ms. Lowry,
reach out,
Mr. Hassan, there have been a number of issues that you've raised. Can I ask that I have your contact information? I can't speak to the OTPT issue. We have had some difficulty with acquiring services for the beginning of the school year. I do know that starting this week, we are starting a compensatory program to ensure that the children who did not get services get the services that they need to have. But I would need our special needs team to be able to address all of the issues that you have raised. I will ensure.
I'm not to cut you off, but I've been raising these same issues. And my thing is, if Newark Public Schools cannot address or accommodate my kids' needs, send them to a district that can. Place them at a school that can. If Camden Street doesn't get out at 2:45 or 2:55, send them to another school that has inclusion, that can address his academic needs, challenge him academically, but also address his social needs.
Okay.
He's 7. He just turned 7 July the 26th, and he's with the third graders.
That's my birthday.
Okay, well, Tyler.
So that makes him special. So let me have your contact information, and I will try to facilitate some responses for you and follow up on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, one more thing. I apologize. Okay, just one more thing. Both boys were approved for independent evaluations. I requested that Eden actually provide the services. However, no one signed off on it. I think Marilyn Mitchell or Dr. Katzman is supposed to sign off, but I'm waiting for someone to sign off on the independent evaluation.
Okay. I will ensure that all of your concerns that you've raised are addressed.
Next speaker.
Ms. Larry, how do you spell your last name?
Lowery.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker is Denise Cole.
I want to say good evening, board. How's everybody doing?
Good evening, Ms. Cole.
And the reports that I heard from everybody's committee was overwhelming. The presentation was confusing. I have high school students that I'm concerned about. And, you know, I went to a parent meeting for my niece, and they're talking about opting out of that Parks test too. So that $5 million they want to spend on computer material for the Parks test, they first need to take a poll of what parents are going to let their children take the Parks test, because actually they're recommending that they opt out of the Parks test for these very reasons. The ACT test, I'm not sure of how he presented ACT to you, but I'm very familiar with how ACT breaks down and the questions that Dr. McCreary asked. And the questions that he asked are very appropriate, because I even have a niece that's in 12th grade this year. Even if the kid, in the last 2 years, they have not been trained to take the ACT test. If you use an ACT as an indicator for children, and that is what you have to use the scores to get into college, our children are not doing it, because I've had students every year take the ACT test who said in the math and science area, They haven't been even went over that in their science or math classes. So they can't possibly do well on the ACT test. Now, when my son graduated, I had to go get a personal tutor to tutor him at my house every weekend for the ACT test because the curriculum does not match. Now, for you to sit here every day and us to ask the questions and you to keep putting raw statistics, I can do that. I'm college graduate. I got to be in my stat class. We can pull numbers from here and there, but the actual reality of what is our student getting in the classroom is not being stated here. And it's frustrating to me. And as the advisory board, I really hope that you guys like come together and put something together, because what's actually going on in the classrooms, or even with what he said, personnel, I went to the parent meeting. Schools right now don't have permanent teachers in classes that are qualified to teach what they're teaching. They have substitutes still in classes. You still have children who are not registered for school, even in the school system. You have schools who haven't even trained them to take and prepare them to take the tests that they're supposed to be taking, the HESPA tests and everything, with everything that went on for the first 2 weeks, and children actually did not go to school them first days, and it couldn't have been 90% because I went to the hub in the South Ward, 400 and something kids was supposed to show up, and if you got 15 kids there, that was good on a good day. So I know the first day of school didn't have 100%. But for me to get all of this information right now, and I had questions to ask you, but then it was so much information that was given, and then we don't get enough time to ask, like formulate questions after we hear all of the reports, is disconcerting to me. So I just hope the advisory board, Dr. McCurry, you asked some very realistic questions. You asked the appropriate questions, but I don't understand how you all can still sit here every meeting and be upset because I look at your face because you asked them for information that you're not getting. So you can't sit in an advisory capacity if you're not getting the information, and you're not, there's no way that she can't hand you statistics on raw material on attendance, because each day, and I taught in the Newark Public School System, each day a child go into homeroom, the homeroom teacher take the attendance is reported to the classroom, the office for every student. So you have raw written material, raw material. She can get that material to you from every school, the raw material that you need. And guess what? You can calculate the numbers yourself. But the problem is they don't want us to, because I seen Bill Clinton went to a conference, and Bill Clinton said what the issue is right now is because they're pushing the charters, and charters did not meet the criteria that if charters did exceptional better than the public school, then they could move forward. But because they have not met that criteria, they have been failing, and public schools have been doing better. They are supposed to close down. So because we have a superintendent that does not attend, and that came from charter school era, and that was her model, that's why you can't get the stats you get. So you all are going to have to come up, and Mr. Hassan, you're going to have to come up with a better issue than to sit here every day and hear the rhetoric and to hear the excuses that's given to you. Because I can go to each school and get the raw material of, you all go to the principal and say, how many came on this day in your school? How many came on your day? They have it right at the school. So you can go right and ask the principals what they have. So for me as a community member to sit here and to hear you guys keep talking about achievement for our children, I want to cry, because it's a lie. It is a lie. This is not achievement. This is setting our kids back. We got children who are not registered today.
I'm sorry, I had to.
I know.
But your points are well taken. And obviously, you mentioned one that you had some other questions. You felt you didn't have enough time to ask them.
Yeah, because
if you want to,
he asked a lot, and believe it or not, he asked the majority of my questions. So I had to cross them off because I was looking at the graphs.
If you have additional questions that you didn't ask or weren't answered here tonight, you can obviously get them to us as a board. We'll get those answers to the questions. We'll email them back to you. In regards to the attendance information that we continue to request for, obviously as a board, we're willing to work with you and any other community members in regards to strategy to getting that information. We will circle back with the district to get
But
a
can't the
definitive date
board,
to have
one
that.
of the board members, if they have time with a parent who's a part of the PTA, can't they go to the schools and ask the principals themselves and pick raw
Nah,
data and come here?
We can't do that.
Why?
We can't do that.
Why?
Because that's just something that will put us in the ethical issue regarding our roles as board members.
Oh, okay.
So as a chair, I can't advise any board members here to do that because that gets into the day-to-day operations of what's going on in the schools.
Well, that's not it. That's asking the question. If you're a board member and you're supposed to be advising them, if they can't get you the raw data and they keep saying something, you have to do something radical. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You're a board. We elected you, and I'm believe it or not, I'm
understand
gonna
that.
ask the constituents, anybody that don't want to take a radical move for our children, radically don't need our
Understood.
vote.
Your
serious.
point's well taken. I think our overall goal and our overall vision is to make sure that we're in the best position possible so that we can further improve ourselves as a board and regain local control. And as the chair of this board, I'm not going to take any actions nor advise any other board members to take any actions that could be used against us as we walk down that path. So
And I don't advise you. First of all, I don't advise you to anyway. I always ask people to
Ms.
stay
Cole,
within the guidelines.
got you.
But you can be creative and work within the box, just
Absolutely.
like they're doing.
Absolutely.
So what you saying to me, Mr. Hassan, what you're saying to me makes no sense because as a board, an advisory board,
Ms. Cole, I understand.
I think you got to look at that a little more.
I do. If we could, I think it would be
Okay.
helpful if we had a conversation offline.
No problem. Thank you.
Next speaker, Ms. Wilhelmina Holder.
It's an emotional day, believe me, it's an emotional day. And then to come down here, whew, I just want to first ask that we have a moment of silence for two committed parent leaders, Charlotte McKinney and Tanya McKinney, who have dedicated their lives to our neighborhood in the West Ward, to West Ward schools, and to especially Lincoln Avenue School in West High. So if we can have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Wilhelmina Holder, 152 Midland Place in Newark. I am deeply disappointed as well in some of the answers that Ms. Cole talked about. Central High School being one of the schools that is high on our radar. Nussie, what does it look like? When I look at what is supposed to happen for our children, and I see purposeful, intentional misguiding of our children in terms of the support that they do not have. Let's look here. No math books, only a math workbook. Algebra 1, no books. No environmental science books, no French 1 book. This is at Central, just at Central now. Parents can't access the power schools, so there's no access to the library, and the guidance counselors are a joke. That's what the kids said. Simply because they're now advisors and not guidance counselors, so maybe they don't have the certifications needed to be guidance counselors. That's not just at Central. Let me not pick on that. I have a pad that I've been out there every day from school to school. And it's amazing that there's a common thread. I didn't bother to bring my Excel chart because I left the funeral and then I went to the repast and I served our community as I was supposed to. But I'll tell you this, we have issues surrounding books in each and every school. The common thread seems to be the math and the science, as well as bilingual. There's no bilingual curriculum, and as well as the shortage of bilingual educators. And that's in each and every school, from what I can see. And I can also see that we have a lot of vacancies. I asked the board to please get a vacancy by subject content in each and every school, because we're not going to move forward until those vacancies are filled, as well as look at the curriculum and the books. So I asked Mr. Nico Matthijs, I called her Saturday and said, we got a big problem. And I laid out what I had in front of me on my Excel chart. And I'm asking for a meeting with Caleb Perkins and her to come to the Secretary of Parent Council meeting, because we need to talk about this. And if you don't see that without adequate supplies and materials, our children are not going to move forward. They're being set up. Classrooms are overcrowded. Yes, they are. Scheduling to this day is still taking place at Barrington High School. Do you believe that? To this day, Rashan Hassan, they're still scheduling children and teachers' schedules are being changed. I could not believe it. Teachers are ending up in classes with no students, and students are still ending up in classes without teachers. And they're without books as well. And the technology piece, that's off the chart. But more importantly, you have the bilingual students. I was at the Office of Enrollment. That's a joke. Why is it that they would recommend to a Portuguese-speaking only mother that her child has to go to Malcolm X Shabazz? I didn't leave that place. I raised holy hell until that child got into Eastside. That's the only Portuguese dual language program. Why would anyone think it's acceptable at 301 West Kenny Street to send them to Malcolm X Shabazz? They're not just doing it to the Portuguese, they're doing it to the bilingual children, and they know they don't have bilingual educators or curriculum in most of the schools. So when I said the Afro-American students are suffering, the Spanish children are being murdered, and the rest of us is just out there. But I'm just disappointed that the board has not been able to put this together and confront Cammie and the administrators over here that are not giving the answers. And I can tell you, she's right. I was out there on day one. I know for a fact we've had less than 20% attendance in most of the schools, and only one school hit 70%. So there is no 90% attendance on day 1, 2, or 3. I can tell you right now, that did not happen. So I don't know why it takes to December for them to get you attendance information. Someone's lying, straight up lying. And I just want to say to you that I need you to stay on focus. Mr. Hassan, if you're going to move this board forward as the chair, you have to stay focused and stop meeting secretly with Cammie Anderson without the rest of your board having knowledge of what's going on and the community, because you promised there would be community hearings. We haven't had one yet in terms of what we need. And what we need is curriculum. What we need are educators who are highly qualified. What we need are classrooms that are manageable. What we need are children to have chair and desks, not cafeteria-style desks. I think room 218 still has those cafeteria-style benches, or is it room 248? But there are rooms 248, 228, 218 in Barringer that are still problematic. And I need you to pay attention, because at this date, we're asking the superintendent and the county superintendent as well as Commissioner Hespy, do not have our children take that assessment because they have not had 30 days of instruction. It's just unfair, and I think every parent needs to opt out this year because, and I'm going to push this as a PTA person, I'm going to push that because I went to every school. Harriet Tubman's talking about it, Westside's talking about it, Central's talking about it, Arts High. Also at Arts High, sat with a student in the library. Let me tell you, they don't have any books over there either.
Ms. Holden.
In chemistry, wait, I have to say this. I actually helped the child with his homework. Chemistry, he watches a video. There's no books, there's no laboratory experience at Arts High for chemistry. You can't do that to our children. He said, Ms. Holden, this is what's happening. We are not allowed experiments. We don't do experiments. I said, well, son, how you gonna be a chemist? They have to have laboratories. So we need to talk about this curriculum piece. We need to talk about the curriculum and the resource piece. We need to talk about books. And I want to say this, too. We like to reinstitute that community forum that I was on with book selection years ago in the secondary piece, because I want to compare the books that Newark Public Schools is buying with what Milburn and Livingston is buying. Because if it's not the same in terms of level of chemistry and Algebra 2, which we don't have books of either, I don't want to hear that our children deserve any less or can't do any less, and I suspect that's what's happening. We have low expectations, so we're not going to buy the best books because they have not given up books. They have not given up book for web-based instruction. They have infused that to supplement the books, but they have not given it up. And I want to say the last thing is I took my Yaya to NYU at the Education Summit when school was out, Yaya and his sister. And we sat in Washington Square Park after we bought some food and had some fun, and he had to do some homework. So I'm teaching him how to do the homework. He's looking at me and said, Grandma, I'm confused. That's not how they taught me in school. I called my daughter. I said, you know, we have a problem here. I know I'm smarter than most third graders, maybe not my grandchild, but most third graders. But the problem is parents cannot help their children because when they go online to Power School, that's not accessible to them. And we heard that complaint at the high school level as well. So we need to get that right so they can see the work that's required. The children will have books so that parents and grandparents can help their children. And that's a huge issue. So let's not talk about moving things forward. And if we can't get the superintendent and other people here to answer the questions, then why don't we have a community board meeting and not have this forum? Because this is not productive. Thank you.
Ms. Holder, I would ask if you, I know you jot everything down on your legal pads. If you could you send me an email of those items that you talked about tonight specifically? Thank you. Next speaker we have is Latifah Covington. Ms. Covington. Next speaker, Oh, it's okay. Next speaker is Ms. Aura Davis.
Good evening. My name is Aura Davis, and I preside at 429 South 9th Street, Newark. I don't have too much to say tonight because there's been so much said and looked like it wasn't simplified enough for the community to understand. One thing I want to say, I don't know what Star Ledger you put the news in about the public meetings, but they're not in Essex County for Newark. I'm telling you, it's not in Newark paper. I take the paper every day and I read it. I don't just flip. So undoubtedly, it's in some other county paper, not for the city of Newark. Because I've asked other people to take the paper for Newark. Do you get it in your paper? I get my paper delivered every morning at 7 o'clock. 7:30, I'm sitting at my table having a cup of tea, reading my paper, and there's nothing in there about the school. If I didn't know somebody that worked at the board and called and asked about these meetings, I would not have known that the meetings were, because I asked the community, and a lot of people don't know because they don't read, and everybody's not at the television looking at that all the time. I know things are on the television. And the other night, when the meeting was being shown, there was no sound. It went dead in the middle of the meeting, and you didn't hear that. So it's not so much that everything is being done like I said. And our children, it's designed for our children to keep going down in the public schools, because nobody's pushing public schools. Everybody's pushing charter. Even when you read the newspaper, all these rich people out there is pushing money into the charter schools to make them go better. But our children needs computers in the classroom, and they need people to teach it, because these tests you're talking about taking, the kids got to take the tests on these computers. If you don't have them in the classroom and somebody teaching it, how are the kids going to do it when that time comes? Everybody don't have computers in their home and savvy to have everything they need. So we need things simplified so our children can take the test and pass these tests, because our kids can learn and do as good as anybody else's kids. Give us the same thing you give other kids, and I guarantee you our kids will do better. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker is Ms. Kathleen O'Prey.
Kathleen O'Prey, 331 Academy Terrace, Linden, New Jersey. Good evening. The 2013-14 school year opened with principals being told that pre-K classes needed to improve their ECHRD scores. The 2014-15 school year opened with pre-K classes being moved to buildings and rooms that lower ECHRD scores. Our new classrooms do not have bathrooms or sinks. They do not have closets or storage. We no longer have playgrounds with equipment. Some of us don't even have a place to hang up a coat. Last year, we were told that the paraprofessionals we worked with would stay with the class. This year, many teachers find that the paraprofessional they worked with has been moved or eliminated. Their replacements do not have experience with early childhood. Last year, families had access to neighborhood schools. This is especially important in the South Ward, where parents are not always able to walk their children to school, and they walk with brothers and sisters. There, they were able to send their children to a neighborhood school with a pre-K. Now, some have to take multiple buses, and some have chosen to keep their children home or use a babysitter. Once winter begins, what will happen to the children arriving on time and meeting the goal of 95% attendance? I'm asking that before you make any more plans to improve the educational settings of our youngest learners, you take the time to visit the classrooms. You talk to the teachers in those rooms and listen to them. Change for the sake of change helps no one. Schools should meet the needs of the community, and schools should meet the needs of children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Perry. The next speaker is Mr. Lyndon Brown.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown is absent, but he wanted me to alert you to the bed bugs at 13th Avenue. That Friday, there was an episode of bed bugs. The kids came home scratching and itching. And as far as we know, that situation has not been corrected, and he wants that school, I don't know why it wasn't shut down over the weekend for desanitizing and cleaning, but it has not happened.
Thank you, Ms. Holder. We got that information, and we actually provided that to Ms. Wilson when we have it.
Were not notified, and that's a big problem.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Lucius Jones. Mr. Jones, at our last board meeting, you indicated that there were some issues in regards to the district's compliance with your ADA accommodations, and that you had not been receiving the district reports prior to the meeting. Has that issue been resolved for you?
That issue has been resolved, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Please set the timer to 5 minutes to accommodate Mr. Jones.
Board members, as Wilhelmina stated, Lucius Jones, 107 Ivy Street. As Wilhelmina stated, we lost two leaders in the community, and their funeral and viewing was today. And I specifically put in the paper that they were PTA presidents and advocate educators. And I think that we know that their parents are working hard as advocates, and I think that someone needs to be designated as an individual who will attend events when it involves parents or students that are in some type of tragedy. The mayor's office was there. We've seen some type of written document from senators and assembly, but nothing from the board. So I just want to put that on the record. I also want to say to this board that it's important that you understand that the entire community and suburban community is watching us. And when you put stuff on TV, specifically when I'm getting ready to get up and speak at the mic, and all of a sudden the mic's just shut off, and you don't hear nothing. But the most interesting part of that, board members, is as I was sitting there watching the TV, cable channel, and I see board members sitting up there talking to the public, and you can't hear a thing. And it's not the first time that has happened. The public begins to believe that it's buffoonery. Because if you watch Channel 77 when there's not a board meeting, everything else plays perfectly clear. Everything that Cammie's involved in, everything that's played from Essex County College is perfectly clear and no sound problems. But almost every single board meeting, there's a problem with sound. Why is that? And what perception are we sending to the community when they get up there and hear nothing? Absolutely nothing. That, brother, Mr. Chair, needs to be corrected immediately because, first of all, it violates not just the board, but the members of the public's right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression. When you put the video on the air, unedited, you are saying to the public, this is a representation of how your dollars are being spent as taxpayers. And the board needs to make sure that the district corrects that. In addition, board members, last month at the public meeting, you guys voted. And you voted that the business meetings will now, public participation would extend to an hour and a half. And the resolution was passed, motioned and passed. But yet and still inconsistency. The inconsistency is you come to this business meeting and you hear the co-counsel says something totally different. And the question to me is who controls the board? You tell me that you are a board, not an advisory board, and you run the board. So is the district running the board? Is the district right or the district's not right? But you need to make sure if the action of the board was not legal, then you need to say that at the meeting, that the actions were not legal, and so forth. We're continuing with our past practices. It needs to be clarified because people become very confused. Additionally, board members, I also want to say that we can't have a district that is confused because we got to discern whether this is an advisory board, this is a board, this is a Cami Anderson board, or this is a district, because it's becoming very, very, very confusing. What I mean by confusing is it seems as if that the district is obstructing the board's ability to function that's not in compliance with either regulation or state statute. And state statute is giving you the power to advise the superintendent, which you cannot advise the superintendent if you don't have access to information. Yes. So the district is violating not only regulations, but state statute. You have a legal responsibility to receive all of the data that you request as long as it's legal and it's it's legal and it's a part of your performance. So when you look at the fact that you continue asking for information, board members, and you don't get information, you got to ask yourself, what is the next step? Because I'm sure when you go to the board training does not tell you to just go there, sit there, waste your precious time. And all of y'all time is precious. Y'all could have been home with your children. You could have been getting your hair done or your toenails clipped or a number of things. To come here and volunteer to not get results, to me, does not seem like value. If your interest is to protect the interests of kids and love the kids and make sure we have upright kids, then we need to make sure that the district understands that you're partners and how do you treat your partner. So I would ask this board to assess itself and to make sure that they're doing everything within their power to make sure this district respects them as a board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones, I just wanted to address one item that you mentioned. At the point in time when I committed I would resolve your 504 accommodation, I then at that time also looked immediately into the taping issue. So upon information and belief, I was aware of we had a problem with the way in which the taping was done. And what I mean by that is the type of cassettes that were being used led to that auditory type of problem. I was not aware, I was aware it was corrected. I'll investigate what happened with the recent taping, but that did not go unnoticed. I personally looked into it, and I believed it was correct. If it wasn't, I will deal with it to ensure that it will be.
Mr. Chair,
So I will ask to that question, what's the what process do we have in place for quality assurance? Since we're taking the tapes that we're recording here and we're delivering them to Essex County College or whoever it is that's airing them, do we have a quality assurance process in place to make sure that once we take it from this facility, whatever we're leaving with is a quality cassette?
Well, I don't have any expertise to deal with the technical side. What I can tell you is that when we do present the tape, we ensure, at least our hope is to ensure that we give a good quality tape. So part of what has to be the investigation, and again, I'm openly acknowledging, I'm committing myself to looking into this, is to figure out what was the problem in the auditory portion of that. I don't have the answer, but I'm going to deal with it. I dealt with the other issue Mr. Jones brought up, and I thought we had resolved it. But now that you're telling me it's not resolved, that's uncomfortable for me. The district will figure out how to correct it.
Thank you. We're now going to old and new business. Do we have any old business that needs to be brought forth on behalf of the board?
Excuse me, Chair Hassan, I'd like to comment on one of the speakers, respond to one of the speakers at this time.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to one of the issues that Mr. Jones brought to the floor, and past times when there was a death, either the superintendent or the chief of staff would always attend the funeral homegoing service. What I found in recent years is that there has been no formal representation by the district that even upon the death of students, that for the most part it would be whatever board member chose to attend, and at times I have seen, I know we're not supposed to call names, but this is a good thing. I have seen Mr. Leone, at times, but I think it's really important that that as a board that we impress upon the superintendent that this is simply a courtesy to the community, that when there's a death of a student, a parent, or someone who is a part of our education community, that there be formal representation by the district every time. So, Chair Hassan, I don't know how we want to proceed with that in a formal way, but I'm just saying I think that we need to, in some formal way, make that request to the district.
I agree with that 100%. I also think from a board standpoint, ourselves as board members, we need to have a formal process amongst ourselves to ensure that we have representation also. So I will defer to your leadership and your wisdom in regards to how we should formally address it, if that's okay with you.
I think we can we'll have this discussion and come up with a process
Okay,
to
very well.
suggest. Thank you.
Welcome. Mr. Jackson, floor is yours.
Just real quick, and I hate to go back over this. And Ms. Hitchcock, I did hear what you just said, and I understand that the district will go back and look at what's going on with the recordings. But as Mr. Jones stated, this is not the first or second time, and we've gotten quite a few reports about the sound for the meetings. And I also know that we have new people who do the recordings for our meetings, and I know that they've been doing other venues for quite some time here in the city of Newark, in particular with the council meetings. And there aren't too many or any issues with the viewing of the council meetings. So I guess my question is, what is the issue exactly? Even in past, when we had the board meetings, when they first went to television, there were no issues with people not being able to hear the meetings. Now, I'm going to say within the last few months or so, safe to say maybe a year's time, we've now had this issue of no sound. Board members can't be heard. Citizens, when they come to the mic, they can't be heard. So I want to know, what is the issue? We also drafted a resolution here on the board to change the actual channel that is shown, and we also wanted it shown live. So I wanted to know what happened with that as well.
Upon my information and belief, there was an issue, and I'm not a technical person, so I'm not speaking with any authority of this being a dispositive answer for you, but it has something to do with the type of tape that's used. And that's, to be honest, this is sort of beyond, this is like the scope of my, quote, expertise of being able to share this with you. The record, this is not done on what is a regular, I think, VCR that we might have in our home, but it's the type of tape that's being used. So what I can answer to you, there's no willfulness, and I'm saying this to you as general counsel to direct or to do anything that is willfully trying to not give sound to that recording. And as you indicated, we had sound before. I will also acknowledge, I don't participate in the actual, what would be the transferal of these minutes to that proper tape. But again, I deem this to be a responsibility that I need to research. Again, I thought that it was fixed. It wasn't, and I've learned that today. I think that in terms of Mr. Jones's other complaint, I committed at the last meeting to ensuring that I would resolve it. I'm going to do that now. I don't have the answer. What I will do in the intervening point, when I find out what the difficulty is, I'll let the chair know, because it will be within the intervening period of the next meeting, so I can give you a very concrete answer. But I'm curious to know what the problem is too, and I'm not saying that facetiously. It is not acceptable for you to see something and not have the sound. But I don't know what the difficulty of that is, but I'll figure it out.
Ms. Basco Richardson.
So the team that's now recording the board meetings also records everything for the city, and I think that I would assume that they have whatever they need to have for it to play correctly, because they're I've never seen any problem with anything else, at least at this particular team. Okay, and the other part of it is that, given all of that, I think the other issue is that the board's desire is to switch stations and to utilize the city station rather than the Essex County station. So even if we weren't having this particular problem and that was what the board has voted on, why couldn't we just move forward with that change?
So what I'm committing to is having this resolved. It'll be resolved in one of those matters. If the end result has to be clearly the switching of the channels to ensure it's going to be dealt with, I'm telling you, we're going to make sure that's resolved. But give me the opportunity to figure out what's going on, what may be the problem. And again, this is an assertion. It's not what I know for fact. I don't know what the machinery is that is used here in this. The tapes I know are done in-house. That much I do know. So we have some equipment in-house. I don't know what that equipment is. I don't know if it's different than what might be the equipment that might be used with respect to how the City Hall taping is done. Again, I'm speculating here. I don't, have the facts enough to be responsible to give you the exact answer, but I'm committing you. This is me speaking to you on behalf of my reputation. I'm going to figure out what the problem is, and I'll get back to your chair as soon as possible. I'll make that inquiry first thing in the morning.
Okay. I would also just add for the record, as we talked about the transition to that paperless, the e-governance model, the vendors that we'll be reviewing the web sessions from, if I'm not mistaken, two of the three service providers offer an option to do live streaming on that platform of board meetings. So as we have those, as we attend the web sessions, it's in our best interest, obviously, as board members, to ask that question to see which service provider can provide that, if that's something that we would like to have as a feature going forward.
And just another question to that. Does the district have anything to do with the editing of the tapes now?
I am not present at all when any of that's done. Again, I don't have an answer to give to you on that, because any answer would be a guess, and there's no direction that's given to, do any editing A or B on taking things in or out. But again, I'm not present. I'm very cautious as a lawyer to sit here and tell you the facts that I know to be the case. I've never witnessed how we tape the actual, transfer of this. I'm beyond curious now, as I've told you, and I'm going to go ahead and figure out and see what we're doing in terms of the equipment we use and the quality of tapes. And, we'll get to the end result of this and give you an outcome that is going to be desirable.
Thank you.
I just also want to reinforce and support, let you know that my team is responsible for the taping, and to our knowledge, it had been rectified with Essex County, but we will support Ms. Hitchcock in her research on this. And we'll also offer to the chair just the protocol that we follow post-meeting with the tape, so that you have a sense of what the handoff experience is.
And I hate to sound like this, but I've watched board meetings, and this is going back some time ago, and I've never witnessed a problem. So to now hear there's a problem with sound, you know, I'm a little skeptical.
Mr. Sillinger?
Yes, I just want to say, the one meeting, the man with the gray hair that does all the city filming, filmed our meeting, and he always does an excellent job, because everyone that Roz has on and other people has on, it's good, but when he did ours, there's a lot of problems with it, and that never happens. The man is always doing the perfect thing. I watch all the channels all the time, but when he did ours that time, there was a lot of cutting in it, like you couldn't hear stuff, and he has good equipment. So maybe somebody, when they deliver the tapes, something happens or something like that.
Thank you, Mr. Sillinger. If there's no other information from board members at this time, I just want to obviously state for the record, at our board retreat that we had this past Saturday, we discussed, followed up on some items that were brought forth at our last board meeting, specifically around information requests, the timeline in which board members shall receive information, and by which means board members should make those requests. We have those processes clearly outlined inside of our board manual. And I want to state for the record that it is our expectation as a board that all information requests that were made tonight that are reasonable will be provided to the board within 72 hours as presented in our board manual. And if the district cannot provide that information in that time frame, then an email be sent directly to me as the chair of the board so that I can disseminate that information to the rest of my colleagues. I believe that everything that was asked for tonight that the district does have information for can and should be provided to us in that timeline.
Understood.
Okay, so just a question for clarity, and the question is around the issue of what isn't reasonable. So if something is determined by the district not to be a reasonable request, you're saying then that the response that you would get would be then to say that it's not a reasonable request? Or are you saying
Not that it's not any request I believe that we make as board members regarding any information pertaining to Newark Public Schools is reasonable. When I say reasonable, meaning that the time frame, 72 hours, is not a reasonable time frame to compile that data and get back to board members as it's written in the board manual.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. If there's no further business from this, I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson.
Mr. Hassan, in terms of the public participation information on bed bugs at 13th Avenue, I reached out to Mr. Barton and he has responded. Our exterminating contractor visited the school last Thursday. There were no specimens available for observation. However, they did inspect 4 of the rooms there and found nothing. So I will advise him again that, there seems to be an additional problem and we'll see what we have to do. But I wanted to provide that update.
Yeah, and just for the record, we do, as a district, we do, in addition to that, the services are offered to family members if they want their homes exterminated, correct?
It's been a while since I've managed facilities. As you know, Mr. Barton is responsible for that area. But I think our contract says that they will provide an inspection for free. I don't think it says that they will perform the extermination. So for family members associated with our schools who may have a problem and need an inspection to confirm the presence of bed bugs, they do offer, I think it's a discounted rate or free. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to confirm that.
Thank you. There's no further business from the board. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Mr. Jackson, Mr. Sellinger?
Second by everybody.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Good night.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.